We are officially halfway through the college football season 2025. Week 8 was crazy. There's a lot of upsets everywhere. But that's not really the point. What I will be discussing is the 10 conferences, and I have changed them to all be region based. So we are going to quickly look at the standings for each conference, who is the leader, and then my college football playoff predictions will be based on the 10 leaders of each of the regions, as well as two as the at-large teams. And I will clearly be discussing why I made the picks I did, and really just some other things like who's going to make a bowl, who isn't. And yeah, let's just go right into it. So starting out with the ACC region, we got Virginia. For whatever reason, their loss against NC State does not count as a conference loss. So they're looking at a potential ACC title game. Like Miami, their one loss is conference play, which is really unfortunate for them. But Virginia's in the race currently. Right now, if we look at the ACC standings, Virginia is top 2. The only one above them is Georgia Tech, who is undefeated overall. So really, if Virginia gets into the ACC title game, they have a really high chance of getting into the playoffs. Some honorable mentions go to James Madison, who is already bowl eligible, and then Duke, who is looking decent. Like, Duke looks really, really good, except for they lost to Georgia Tech, and it wasn't exactly that close. If we look at the overall ACC standings, NC State is 4-3 right now, which is pretty solid. They are 1-2 in conference play, which isn't exactly great. Clemson is below that 50% again. Now, the reason why I have Wake Forest as the bowl line, for example, just to quickly explain what the bowl line is, any team that is at or above the bowl line is most likely to be in a bowl for the postseason, whereas any team below is most likely not. And so the reason that I have Wake Forest as the bowl line is that Wake Forest went into OT with Georgia Tech. They're not that bad. Like, yes, they're 1-2 in conference play right now, but Wake Forest, I think, is underestimated. And they're decent. I think they'll get 6 wins. Clemson, I think, will squeak out a 6-6. Same with NC State. Duke, I think, is actually looking pretty decent. They'll probably go around 8-4. And James Madison and Virginia are both already bowl eligible. And Virginia's ranked. If there's any team that's leading the region right now, it's definitely Virginia. And then at the bottom 3, like Coastal, Liberty, and Charlotte are not good at all, especially Charlotte. Charlotte's almost in the not eligible for bowl at all category. If they lose one more time, that's it. They're not getting a bowl. Moving on to the American region, this is technically, this is going to be my most controversial pick. Navy is the best in this region right now. They're undefeated. I think Navy is an underrated team, and they have the potential to be that group of 5 pick. Like, everyone's talking about USF, and people were talking about Memphis until they lost this week to UAB of all teams. But don't get it twisted. Navy's undefeated. Navy's one of 6 undefeated teams left. And so I think that deserves some level of validity. Like, Navy's not bad. I will give an honorable mention to Pittsburgh and Maryland. Maryland got off to a really hot start, and then it hit October, and they started losing, as they always do. And then there's Pittsburgh, who, yeah, I would say that their best win is Florida State, but that doesn't really mean much anymore, because Florida State is most definitely like falling off. But Pittsburgh has been proven a point. Pittsburgh is here to win, and they've been doing that. If we look at the overall standings, Penn State is falling out entirely. Like, low-key, Penn State's probably not gonna even get a bowl. Like, their schedule's really, really difficult. It's like they expected themselves to be top 2, much like the AP poll said they were preseason for some reason. But no, Penn State is low-key garbage, and they're not making a bowl. I think Maryland is going to be able to squeak out 2 more wins. Pittsburgh only needs 1 more. I would like to quickly look at UConn. I do currently have UConn rated below Penn State, but UConn, if they get 1 more win, then I would be willing to rank them above Penn State. Like, Penn State really isn't that good. And and obviously the rest of the American region isn't very good at all. Like, if I'm going to be honest, the American region is most definitely the weakest, and even though I'm saying right now that Navy is going to be the Group of 5 pick, Navy is definitely the one I am least confident is going to be in the playoffs, but I'm still going to stick to it. I think Navy's a playoff team. It'll come down to their game against USF, and they're most likely going to be in the American Conference Championship. If not, though, it would be between USF and Tulane. But Navy looks really good right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being in the college football playoffs. Shout out to UMass for still being winless. They're 0-7. Not only that, but they've lost to an FCS team. Like, UMass is terrible. UMass is probably the worst team in the country. Like, they got blown out by Kent State. How do you do that? UMass is terrible. Anyways, moving on to the Big 12 region, which is basically Texas, Oklahoma, featuring Arkansas. But A&M looks really, really good right now. They're undefeated. Both Oklahoma and Texas have been giving them a run for their money, but they unfortunately have some bad losses. Like, Oklahoma's one loss is to Texas, which part of that is that they put Mateer in after he had hand surgery. Like, I don't know why they would do that. They probably had a higher chance of winning if they didn't play Mateer, but here we are, and then they lost that game. And then Texas lost to Florida. Like, the Ohio State loss is far more understandable, but Florida? Are we serious? And then they went to OT with Kentucky. Like, Texas is not all that. Everyone's talking about, like, oh, Texas, they're still in the playoff chance, but no. No, Texas is not in the playoff chance. They're getting a bowl for sure, but A&M is going to get a playoff spot. I honestly don't think Oklahoma is even going to be in the playoffs. I honestly think A&M might win the SEC. Like, that might be crazy. I think some people are like, oh, it's all about Bama. No. A&M hasn't lost. Like, Alabama has that embarrassing loss against Florida State, but A&M doesn't have that. A&M's been consistently winning, even though it's like, oh, well, if you just ignore the first half, then A&M looks really good, right? Because they struggle in the first half, but they always find a way to close it out. And at the end of the day, it's about who wins, not necessarily how they win. It's about who wins. So if we take a look at the Big 12 line as a whole, I do think that this is one of the strongest regions. As, like, if you look at the bowl line and above, all these teams have at least 5 wins. Like, North Texas was in the running for the Group of 5 pick at one point. I don't think they're quite that good, but they're already bowl eligible, so that's really good. SMU, I think, is more of a sleeper pick for the ACC right now. Houston's been going strong. They haven't been losing. Their one loss is to Texas Tech, which is pretty understandable. And as for TCU has a couple of bad losses, but I think they're still definitely going to get at least one more win and into the bowl. Baylor, when I go week by week, Baylor is always going in and out. It's like they're either going to be 6-6 or they're going to be like 5-7, and that's a huge difference when it comes to bowls. Right now, I'm more in the 5-7 camp. So I don't think that Baylor is getting a bowl, like, at all. And then also shout out to Sam Houston for also going 0-7. They're really bad, and I don't see them really getting much wins at all this entire season. So Sam Houston's cooked. All right, moving on to the Big 10 region. I mean, this one should be pretty obvious. Indiana is definitely the best team in that region, and it's not close. Missouri is confusing because, like, they very much haven't won against any super high-powered teams, but they've also been keeping it close. And then they've also been destroying anyone who is, like, lower tier, with the exception of, like, South Carolina, where they almost lost to them. Illinois, I think, is back in the conversation. If their one loss is, like, even given it is a blowout, but if their one loss is to Indiana, then that gives Illinois some level of validity. And I do agree that they should at least be close to ranked. I don't know if I would necessarily would say they should be ranked, but they're at least should be close. If you look at the Big Ten region as a whole, there is a lot of really good teams in this conference also. Northwestern I have right below the bowl line because I'm not confident they'll be able to get that 6th win. But look at all those 5-2 teams. Like, goodness. We got Iowa, Iowa State, Nebraska, Minnesota. There's so many teams that will probably be bowl eligible very, very soon. And I think that Indiana definitely has a chance of making it at least to the national championship. Like, they are at least going to be in that game. Honestly, the actual Big Ten conference championship is going to be a really, really good game. Ohio State versus Indiana. It's going to be awesome to see. And I did have Nebraska ranked so much higher before this week, but that loss to Minnesota is a little bit rough. I do still think that Nebraska is better than Minnesota, but it definitely lowers my confidence in Nebraska. Like, I had them probably around 3 or 4 going into this week, and then after this week, I'm like, okay, they're not that good. And then, of course, Iowa is now much higher with 5 wins. And, of course, beating Penn State, even though at this point that doesn't mean a whole much. Like, oh my god, that doesn't mean a whole bunch. But Northwestern has also beat Penn State. So that, I think that's really funny. And it's like, obviously, if you look at the very bottom, then you're like, oh, okay, these teams aren't very good. Like, the bottom 4 especially, Purdue, Wisconsin, Missouri State, Northern Illinois, like, these teams are rough. NIU is most likely going to get that 7th loss and become bowl ineligible quite soon. All right, moving on to the Conference USA region, we got Vanderbilt leading them. Vanderbilt got a huge win against LSU, and Louisville got a huge win against Miami. Like, honestly, it might be Louisville's fault if Miami doesn't make the playoffs, because Louisville just came in and beat them. Like how does that happen? And also Cincinnati, I think it's also worth noting because they're only 1 loss. Do you notice that Tennessee is not in this top 3 anymore? Tennessee would have been my pick last week, but their loss to Alabama, at this point they have 2 losses, which is not great because all 3 of these teams only have 1. Like, if we take a look at the standings, I did rank Memphis below Tennessee, even though it's like they have less losses, but Memphis lost to UAB. That's bad. I did have Memphis as my group of 5 pick for a little bit, but at this point, they've taken their loss. It's looking real bad because it's also in conference play, so that means that's reducing their chance of being the American Championship at all. And so if they're not in the championship, their playoff chances are wraps. It's actually over for them. And Western Kentucky, the reason Western Kentucky is the bowl line, again, they're 5-2, which is not bad. Western Kentucky has a very high chance of getting a bowl. But then you look immediately down to the 2-4 Kentucky and then all the teams below them, and you're like, oh, okay. There are a lot of 4-3 teams in this Conference USA region, but it's really hard for me to see them getting 2 more wins, as a lot of their schedules are a little bit stronger. And also these teams aren't that great. And so Virginia Tech and Kentucky, I think, have a higher chance of a bowl than all these 4-3 teams. But definitely Western Kentucky and the teams above them are significantly better than the teams Kentucky and below. But shout out to this region for having 4 ranked teams. Vanderbilt, Louisville, Cincinnati, and Tennessee. Even the week before that, Louisville wasn't ranked, but Memphis was. So this region has been killing it. And I honestly would like to see Vanderbilt in the playoffs because that would be awesome because they used to be the SEC stepping stool, and now they're a legitimate threat. Like, I see, like, them versus Missouri is going to be a really, really good game. Now, moving on to the MAC region, I mean, Ohio State looking to be the best team in the country right now. I don't see... Really, Indiana, I think, is the only team that's going to challenge them because their schedule isn't that hard. So I think Ohio State's just going to cruise their way to the postseason, and then they'll finally get a run for their money in the Big Ten championships. Notre Dame's on here because, yes, I agree it was really lame to have an 0-2 team in the top 25. That made no sense to me. And obviously Michigan's here because they've been getting some good wins too. Notre Dame probably doesn't lose the rest of the season. So they'll probably go 10-2, which for some people will be enough to get them a playoff spot. I really don't want that because I think Notre Dame is taking too much advantage of being an independent. And to me, that's really boring. Like, I don't really see why this team should be in the playoffs. I think there should be some more interesting teams, like for example Virginia and Vanderbilt. I think they'd be cooler to see than Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's loss to Miami also looks worse with time, because Miami now has a loss to Louisville. So if Notre Dame can't beat Miami, but Louisville can, are they really a playoff caliber team? I don't know. The MAC region's really interesting because it's very those top three heavy, and then the rest of this conference is garbage, right? Like Michigan State is not getting 6 wins. It just isn't happening. And then there's a lot of teams you see that are 4-3, but who's rooting for Central Michigan to get 2 more wins? Like, to me, that just doesn't seem very realistic. Also, shoutouts to Akron for being academically ineligible, which is crazy to me. Like, how do you even do that? I think the GPA requirement's like 2.4 or something, and somehow Akron is below that. So Akron's not going to a bowl, 100%. And Kent State probably isn't either. And I wouldn't be surprised if Eastern Michigan gets that 7th loss. So yeah, this region is very top heavy. Like it has the best team in the country, and then Notre Dame and Michigan are really good too. And then every other team in this region is garbage. It's so interesting to see. Now moving on to the Mountain West, we got a new leader, BYU. BYU is once again undefeated, and for whatever reason does not get the respect from the polls. Like BYU is really, really good. They beat Utah, who beat ASU, who beat Texas Tech. Like, you can't tell me that BYU isn't a top team. Because at this point in the season, if you have no losses, you're a playoff team. Again, there's only 6 teams that are undefeated. So I think all 6 of them should be in the playoff as of this moment. Texas Tech, you lost to ASU. Even though you weren't using your best quarterback, the fact that you lost still is rough. I do think that you're the second best in the Mountain West region. But Utah, I do have Utah above ASU, just because Utah's 2 losses are to BYU and Texas Tech, whereas ASU has lost to another team. I just have to quickly remind myself of what that team is. ASU lost to Mississippi State. That's not great. So yeah, that definitely hits Texas Tech a lot harder, and so I think Utah is better than ASU. If you look at the rest of the Mountain West region, it's basically a combination of the Big 12 and real-life Mountain West. UNLV was looking to have a 12-0 season, but Boise State has now destroyed that. And so now I think UNLV is also out of the Group of 5 conference race. And so then every other team, which is basically almost every Big 12 team in this region, is probably going to hit a bowl. I don't think Colorado is one of those teams, though, because their schedule's a little rough. The fact that they beat Iowa State, though, is a little bit surprising. But I don't think that Colorado's going to a bowl, nor do I think the majority of the real-life Mountain West teams in this region, with the exception of New Mexico State, who's Conference USA for some reason. But regardless, I don't think any of these teams are making bowls. UTEP and Colorado State and Air Force, those teams are all bad. Like, it's... You know what's also crazy? UNLV allowed Air Force to score 48 points. How does that happen? There was, like, no defense that entire game. But anyways, moving on to the Pac-12 region, Oregon is still very definitively leading it. Obviously, USC lost to Notre Dame, which is unfortunate. And Washington lost to Michigan, which is unfortunate. But I do think that those two are still in the top 3 for this region for sure. And Oregon definitely still leads it, with their one loss being to Indiana, which looks more and more valid every week. However, the struggle against Penn State is a little bit of a concern, because Penn State lost to some teams that are much, much worse than Oregon. But I don't think that means Oregon's bad. I think Oregon's still really, really good. But that loss to Penn State they didn't lose to Penn State. That game against Penn State is looking more and more concerning by the week, especially with Penn State falling off the oblivion. If we look at the rest of the region, SDSU is a big surprise to me. Like, they were looking bad. Their one loss is to Wazoo, which is, if you look even on the standings, Wazoo is not good. And then, of course, there's good old Oregon State. The first team, besides the 3 that were already ineligible going into the season, The first team that isn't going to be at a bowl. Finally, they fired their head coach, though, thank God. And they got their one win. Given it was an FCS team, a win is a win. That's all I'm saying. Hawaii is already bowl eligible, which is crazy because Hawaii normally isn't known to be like a powerhouse, but I think Hawaii is awesome. And also shout out to UCLA for just being the run killer. UCLA at this point is just trolling. They went like 0-4, and now they're on a win streak. Like, yes, they fired their head coach to do that, but I think UCLA is really funny. And it's a funny concept of a team. And I do have them above Fresno, because Fresno I don't think is that good. But there is a chance they will become bowl eligible. I don't think the Pac-12 is that bad. Like, if you look at this region, it's not that bad. Boise State is starting to become in the conversation again for a group of 5. But probably not. 2 losses is a little too much for a group of 5 team right now. But SDSU might snipe something from Boise State. It's hard to tell right now. And California isn't doing too bad either. Why are California and Stanford in the ACC? I still don't know. But yeah, the Pac-12 region isn't that bad. They don't have an undefeated team anymore, but that's okay. Oregon's probably still being in the playoffs, and probably still half of this region is going to end up in a bowl. Moving on to the SEC region, Alabama still leading, unfortunately. I'm a Bama hater personally, but that you can't deny that they're a really, really good team. Ole Miss is looking in that second place spot. However, there's a chance they are going to fall off even more. LSU, I think, is out of the playoff conversation entirely with their 2 losses already, one of which is to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's looking like a playoff team. LSU is not. But Bama is definitely at least going to be in the SEC title game. At the very least, going to be in it. Are they going to beat A&M? Maybe. Some people are saying they're the second best team in the country right now. I wouldn't go that far because they took a loss to Florida State, which looks worse and worse every week. So if we look at the overall SEC standings, a lot of the SEC region, aka the Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi region, is not that good. Like, yes, I do have the bowl line a little bit high. I had it lower in previous, I had it way lower in previous weeks, all the way down to almost Jacksonville State level. But the problem is that Mississippi State might not get 6 wins. Like, I had them at 6-6 for a long time. Same with Auburn. But I'm having a hard time believing that Mississippi State's going to get a 6th win. Because their schedule's rough. Tulane already has that 6 wins. Ole Miss and Alabama, probably both playoff teams. This is, if you haven't noticed, I haven't used either of my at-large picks yet. So they're going to be used for these last 2 regions. It's Alabama and Ole Miss are probably both going to be in the playoffs. I don't necessarily think Ole Miss is going to be in the SEC title game, but I do think they'll be good enough to get a playoff spot. LSU, though, probably just a bowl. And same with Tulane. Tulane has a chance to snipe the group of 5 pick, but I don't think that's happening. I think Tulane will just be 11-1, and they'll maybe... I think they'll be 11-1, potentially 11-2 if they lose the American region to Navy or USF. I don't know. But Tulane looks really good, but not enough to get a group of 5 playoff spot. And then the rest of this is mostly made up of Sun Belt teams. Shout out to Southern Alabama, who's likely going to take another loss and become bowl ineligible. And then shout out to UAB for ruining Memphis's run. Like, UAB is at this point just trolling. Like, I feel like a lot of the teams that have fired their head coach at this point are just going to be trolling. And they're just going to get wins they absolutely should not be getting. And it'll be really funny to see some teams' playoff chances end to something ridiculous like UAB versus Memphis. The final region we got is the Sun Belt region, aka the Georgia-Florida region. Georgia's leading this right now because they just beat Ole Miss, who was previously undefeated before this. Georgia's 1 loss is to Alabama, which is far more valid than Miami's loss to Louisville. Oh, how Miami has fallen. Miami was my pick for this region for a hot minute, but now Georgia's leading this. and Miami's fallen to third because Georgia Tech is also undefeated, potentially the ACC title winner. And so for that reason, I also have them as a playoff team. The problem I have with the Georgia-Florida region is that a lot of these teams aren't very good. Like UCF, I don't think is getting 6 wins. I think every team, UCF and below, is not getting 6 wins. USF already has 6 wins. Miami's probably getting a 6th very, very soon. But every other team, I don't see them getting 6. Like Kennesaw State, maybe. But UCF probably won't. So why would Kennesaw State? And Georgia State's probably going to get a 7th loss soon. So it's probably wraps for them. But, like, again, this region is very, very top-heavy. USF is definitely in the running for the group of 5 pick. A lot of people say it's going to be USF. Really, it'll come down to the USF versus Navy game in the regular season. And they might face off again in the American title. I don't know. Alright, and now that I've discussed that, let's go over what I like to call the Promotion and Relegation League, where I took the standings from 2024 and then put them all into ranked conferences. And so I'm going to quickly go over who I think the 3 best teams in each conference are, who will likely rise up to the next level, and the 3 worst that will fall to the previous level. So right now I have the Big Ten as basically the Super League, where I took the 12 playoff teams plus Ole Miss and put them in a conference together. And at this point, I think Boise State, Penn State, and Clemson are all falling out. They're not having the best of seasons. The 10 teams above them, I think the Big Ten being the top one also works because it's like if you're in the Big Ten, you're staying in the Big Ten. And then the 3 teams that don't meet the Big Ten will fall to the SEC. So Boise State, Penn State, Clemson probably falling to the SEC. Alabama, Miami, and BYU are looking really, really good. So I see them joining the Big Ten in the Promotion and Relegation League probably in the next season. I did have Texas Tech. Well, Texas Tech was in the Big 12, but Alabama, Miami, and BYU, those are definitely looking to be really, really strong teams. South Carolina, Syracuse, and Army, all really, really strong teams in 2024, have definitely fallen off this year. I think they're all 3 of them are below a 50% win rate, so they're probably all falling to the Big 12. And then A&M, if you look at the Big 12, A&M, Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, those teams are all really, really good. Florida, Kansas State, Arkansas, they're looking a little rough. And then even in the ACC, you have some really, really strong teams. You have Oklahoma, USC, and Iowa likely jumping to the Big 12. And then you got some really bad teams also. Marshall, Boston College, and Louisiana, all likely to drop to the Pac-12. And then the Pac-12, like, it's like decent, which I think makes sense if you're like the 5th league out of 10, that you're definitely just like a team of decent teams. And so I think Pittsburgh, Kansas, and NC State are good enough to jump to the ACC, whereas West Virginia, Jacksonville State, and definitely Sam Houston are dropping to the American. And the American has some stacked teams. Like Virginia, Cincinnati, and Utah, they were all like incredibly mediocre in 2024. They're definitely going up to the Pac-12. Wisconsin, UTSA, Buffalo, probably dropping to the Sun Belt. And yet the Sun Belt also has some pretty good teams. USF obviously is looking to be really, really good. Houston and Arizona have been pretty decent as well. Whereas Arkansas State, Colorado State, and NIU, they're probably dropping to the Mountain West. North Texas, Northwestern, and Mississippi State are likely to be the ones to jump to the Sun Belt, as the first 2 are almost bowl eligible. And Mississippi State is probably going to be a little bit under 50%, but in the Mountain West level, which is Conference 8 out of 10, they're probably going, like, just being 5 wins might be good enough to get out of the Mountain West. Because, like, if you look at the bottom 3, these are all teams with 1 win each. Oklahoma State, Oregon State, and South Alabama. They're probably dropping in the MAC, which is unfortunate to see for the Oregon State Beavers. And then the MAC, which is like teams that you would think aren't very good. You got Hawaii, Troy, and New Mexico, all likely to jump to the Mountain West. And then you have some truly bad teams, Eastern Michigan, Nevada, and Charlotte, to drop to Conference USA. Conference USA has SDSU in it because SDSU was really bad in 2024, and now they're looking to be pretty decent. So you may think SDSU is probably underrated in the Promotion Relegation League, but they'll probably go up to the MAC, and then they can continue their climb if they continue to have good seasons. Akron, Georgia State, and Middle Tennessee, though, they're looking real rough, and they barely just escaped being FBS independents in 2024, and now I think they'll drop down to the independents. And what I did with the independents is that I just took the 6 worst teams, including the 2 that just came from the FCS level. Southern Miss, Kennesaw State, and Delaware likely to jump to Conference USA, whereas Missouri, Kent State, and UMass would drop to FCS. And I also decided, just for funsies, to take the 3 best FCS teams, which is South Dakota State, North Dakota State, and Tarleton State, can jump up to the FBS level, compete as independents, and see what happens. So yeah, that's going to be it for the Week 9 coverage. I hope you enjoyed my yap session, and I hope you'll be here next week when I discuss what happens during Week 9. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.